Hello and welcome to the France 24 interview. Our guest today is the President of the Republic of Kenya, William Ruto. Mr. President, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
You just attended this summit for a new global financing pact here in Paris. Let's get straight to the point. The objective is to fight both climate change and poverty. Can this be done with the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank as we know them, or should we get rid of those?
As we know them, we will have difficulty. I think you forgot one aspect. It's just a new global financing pact to deal with poverty, climate change, and also to contextualize the issue of a new architecture for the international financial system, especially the MDBs. In their current status, it's not possible. We have three important issues that inform how we move forward on both issues of financing and also climate change. One is urgency, pace, speed, one aspect. The other aspect is scale, numbers. And the third aspect is cost. How much does it cost? In its current setup, our multilateral development banks take ages to get anything done. There is all manner of bureaucracy. Number two, scale is limited. You always get this story, or we have little room for concessional funding. You cannot run development anywhere in the globe, including the global south, including our continent, including Kenya, without concessional funding. And then number three is that we pay, especially those of us from the global south, especially for those of us in the African continent, we pay up to 8 times more for the same resources because of something called risk. And the Secretary General of the UN was speaking to it yesterday, that why would one set of countries pay more than others? That system that others pay 8 times more than others is broken. It is rigged. It is unfair. And so it is very important for us to do two things: to fix the multilateral financial architecture, and number two, to be clear about climate financing so that we can deal with the challenge of poverty and we can deal with the existential threat that climate change poses to humanity.
I want to get to the situation at home. Your rival at the last presidential election, Raila Odinga, has led protests across the country. There was a pause in April. He said, okay, we should try a dialogue. Now he's saying, we're about to resume those protests in the coming days. So are you fearing that there could be unrest, violence, and do you think he really wants to dialogue or he wants to push you out of power?
He has no way of pushing. Kenya is a constitutional democracy.
Yes.
The people of Kenya have matured. They know what it is that makes the power of the people. The people decide. And when the people decide, it's final. So the chance of pushing anybody out of power does not arise.
Do you think that's what he wants, or he wants to dialogue?
The last election was different. In fact, the last election was prosecuted on the platform of issues. In fact, although the election was closely contested, the people of Kenya agreed with the outcome because they participated in it. And our Electoral Commission did a fantastic job. In fact, it is world acclaimed. Many of the international observers, many of the local observers, in fact, all observers gave our electoral body thumbs up because they did a wonderful job, an incredibly wonderful job. So the outcome of the election is settled. What we are having is politics, and I have no problem with politics. I don't have
a problem with Raila Odinga now.
I don't have a problem with Raila Odinga. He's my opponent. There is no problem. We are competitors. I have no problem with him. I have no problem with Raila Odinga organizing protests. There are protests in this city of Paris every day. It doesn't, I mean, it's part of democracy. It's part of expression. All I have told our friends Raila Odinga and company is let us not engage in destruction of property. Let us not engage in violence. Protests is perfect.
Sudan. The situation is getting worse. The US-Saudi ceasefire is breaking down. Violence resumed in Khartoum, in Darfur, in South Kordofan. Thousands have been killed. Millions of civilians are on the run. The UN Secretary General, I'm quoting him, warns that the scale and the speed of Sudan's descent into death and destruction is unprecedented, and it could radiate insecurity across the region. Are you as worried as Antonio Guterres?
I am as concerned as Antonio Guterres. In fact, there are already signs and vestiges of genocide.
Genocide.
I mean, there is, what is going on in Sudan is unacceptable because military power is being used by both parties to destroy the country and to kill civilians. It is completely unacceptable. And the war is senseless. The war is not legitimate in any way because where Sudan is before it was disrupted by this war, the people of Sudan themselves have decided to take charge of their own country. They were on the path towards a democratic process that would install, for the first time in a long time, a civilian administration. But it was disrupted by this war. So what is going on in Sudan is unacceptable, and that is why, as the leadership of the region, IGAD, we had a meeting 2 weeks ago. We agreed on a mechanism of how to deal with Sudan because, first and foremost, it is our responsibility as regional leaders, as countries that border Sudan, and as countries where Sudan is a member of the IGAD. We have also agreed on both how to engage the military and how to develop a process that brings on board civilians and the trajectory of the people of Sudan making a decision about their own country. Yes, today I had a meeting with President Abiy, the chair of AU, to agree on the next steps. I subsequently had a meeting with President El-Sisi, who is a leader in our region and brings a lot of value into the equation because they share a big border with Sudan. There are 5 million Sudanese in Egypt. So he becomes a very critical player in settling Sudan because our interest is to stop the war, stabilize Sudan, and make sure that we deal with the humanitarian crisis that currently is ongoing.
But all the mediation efforts have stalled. You yourself, you were appointed at the helm of this mediation, but the head of the Sudanese army, General al-Burhan, says, no, we don't want William Ruto because we believe he's backing the paramilitary RSF. So basically, you were told, don't mess with Sudan. What's your reaction?
Well, everybody has their own opinion.
Well, he has a strong opinion about you.
But I don't think there is any license whatsoever for anybody, any leader, to engage in the destruction of their country and to pander to, we do not want interference.
Is he the main culprit?
It is what he is saying about IGAD. It is what he is saying about the UN. It is what he is saying about the talks that were there in Jeddah. That is unacceptable. But that is his opinion.
Is he the main culprit of what's going on, Mr. President?
The main accusation against Kenya is that we have Hemeti in one of our hospitals in Nairobi, which is not true. It's a whole false narrative. But that aside, we are much more concerned about the millions of people in Sudan who today are dead, or the children and women who have no access to food. In fact, people are dying, children are dying because they have no food. And that is why the Secretary General called for a pledging session on Monday, and Kenya is among the countries that pledged and is giving money for humanitarian support for the people of Sudan because we believe in a solution.
Can you answer my question? Is General Al-Burhan the male culprit in your eyes of the genocide you're describing?
It is not for me to apportion blame at the moment. We want to resolve the issue. And that issue will not be resolved until we get General Al-Burhan, General Emeti, and the political leaders, the civil society, women groups, youth groups, onto the table so that we can sort out this problem.
You still hope it's feasible?
It is feasible.
DRC, quickly. Obviously, in the east of the DRC, the East African community sent a military force several months ago. However, President Tshisekedi of the DRC has been critical of the force, saying, they're not really going after the armed groups, especially the M23 group, and the Kenyan general who was leading the force resigned, and we don't really understand what's it. And by the way, we don't really want this force anymore. We'd rather have a force from SADC. So this means this military venture is a failure, and you're going to pull your troops out, if I follow the logic.
We will not walk away from the people of DRC. The problem in DRC is our problem. The people of DRC deserve better than they have. They deserve a much more peaceful environment. They've been at it for 20, 30 years. We cannot continue to turn a blind eye to what's going on in DRC. And that is why the region made a decision, and we are spending our own resources.
But you're not welcome anymore, Mr. President. The president said we don't want...
Welcome or no welcome, it is our region. And for your information, when we were the first, Kenya was the first in the theater in November last year.
I remember that.
When we went to DRC in November last year, the M23 was 7 kilometers to Goma. I can tell you today, there has been cessation of hostilities the last 3 months. The M23 are nowhere near Goma anymore. In fact, the M23 have been pushed, and they have actually acceded to the program that was set up. The last 2 days, in fact, the last 2 days, there was a mission by all the countries, Kenya, Uganda, DRC, Rwanda, Burundi, on a mission to go and identify the cantonment area for M23. We have made huge progress in stabilizing Eastern DRC. There are sporadic cases in many areas, because this is not a problem of a year. This is a problem of 30 years. I mean,
so you don't accept the criticism from the president?
The last 6 months, we have managed to do what was not done in 30 years. We have stabilized the place. There is a real chance today that the M23 will be cantoned. In fact, the last summit we had in Burundi, DRC government itself said, yes, where we had identified as the cantonment area for M23 is not livable, because there's no water, there's no road, there's nothing, it's a bush. So we said, okay, let's agree on a different place. And that is the place that the mission was being sent to look at 2 days ago. So there is general acceptance that a lot of progress has been made. It could have been faster, maybe, but I don't think it could have been faster than what it is.
So you're staying the course?
We are staying the course, and DRC is on board. Aside from all the discussions in the media, DRC are on course because they can see this is the only realistic chance for us to sort out the challenges of DRC.
Last issue, Somalia. On May 15th, it was announced that you would reopen the border after more than a decade being closed. There is an all-out crackdown against Al-Shabaab by the new Somalian president. But some are saying, as a result, we're seeing al-Shabaab go towards Kenya and strike Kenya. According to the latest count, at least 22 security officers were killed in the Lamu and Garissa counties just in the last 2 weeks. Was it the right decision to reopen the border at the time when al-Shabaab seems to be back on Kenyan soil?
It was, it still is the right decision, because the challenge of al-Shabaab, we have to confront it. And we intend and we have every chance to defeat al-Shabaab. What al-Shabaab is trying to do is, because there is the drawdown of troops that's supposed to happen from this month of July, they're trying to reposition themselves to create the impression that they will take over the region. We will not allow them. We are very clear. We are working with President Hassan in Mogadishu. We have decided, as the frontline states, Uganda, Kenya, Sudan, that we are going to stay this course. And if necessary, and we think it is necessary, we are going to stay beyond the drawdown timetable so that we don't lose what we have achieved merely because we have walked away from a situation and allowed al-Shabaab back into the equation or into the theater. We are very clear, and we are going to send a very powerful message to al-Shabaab that they are not going to reverse the gains that we have made in the last couple of years.